A la edad de 8 años, mientras vivía en Guatemala, aprendió programación de manera autodidacta. A los 17 años, fue becado para estudiar en Estados Unidos. A los 29 años, se había convertido en millonario luego de venderle 2 startups a Google. Ha revolucionado la manera en que se autentifican los procesos en Internet, la forma en que se digitalizan libros y desarrolló un servicio que permite a millones de personas aprender idiomas de forma completamente gratuita a la vez que traducen toda la web. ¿Cómo lo ha logrado? El protagonista de esta historia es Luis Bonan, un emprendedor guatemalteco que nació en Ciudad de Guatemala el 19 de agosto de 1978. Desde muy joven, Luis despertó una gran pasión por la tecnología y los videojuegos. Como todos los chicos de aquella época, soñaba con un Nintendo para Navidad. Así que su madre decidió regalarle una computadora Commodore 64 cuando cumplió 8 años. En dicha computadora aprendió a programar de forma autodidacta y a los 13 años ya hacía sus propios programas. En su infancia tuvo la oportunidad de asistir a una escuela privada bilingüe, hecho que Luis califica como un gran privilegio y que sentaría las bases para sus ideas en el futuro. Además de su pasión por la tecnología, Luis era un prodigio de las matemáticas y la física. Así que, al terminar la secundaria, recibió una beca completa para estudiar en la Universidad de Duke al norte de California en Estados Unidos. Allí estudió matemáticas y se graduó en el año 2000. Posteriormente, estudió un doctorado en ciencias de la computación en la Universidad Carnegie Mellon, en Pensilvania. Al finalizar sus estudios, en 2005, se convirtió en profesor de dicha universidad. Mientras trabajaba como profesor, se encargaba de dirigir el laboratorio de investigación tecnológica de la universidad. Allí, en conjunto con varios de sus alumnos, identificó un problema. Cada vez eran más los sitios en Internet que necesitaban un sistema de autenticación que les permitiera saber si estaban recibiendo información de una persona real y no de un programa. Por ejemplo, un sitio web que vende boletos para un concierto necesita saber si quien compra un boleto es una persona real. De otra forma, cualquier revendedor puede crear un programa que compre todos los boletos automáticamente. Luego de varios meses de arduo trabajo, Luis creó en el 2006 CAPTCHA, una solución simple pero efectiva. Se trataba de un pequeño complemento que obligaba a las personas a escribir una palabra al azar formada por letras distorsionadas, para identificarse como humanos reales cada vez que iban a llenar un formulario o a realizar una compra en algún sitio. Este útil sistema funcionaba correctamente debido a que las computadoras aún no podían digitalizar textos fácilmente. La pequeña startup fue un completo éxito y recibió varios reconocimientos y premios a lo largo de los años. Miles de sitios en Internet como PayPal comenzaron a usar dicha tecnología. El impacto fue tal que alrededor de 200 millones de veces al día alguien escribía un captcha en Internet. En un principio, dicha cifra hacía sentir orgulloso a Luis, pero luego de reflexionar, descubrió que las personas tardaban aproximadamente 10 segundos para completar un captcha. Al hacer cuentas, se percató de que la humanidad estaba perdiendo aproximadamente 500.000 horas diarias, y dicho tiempo podría ser aprovechado de alguna forma. Tras analizar por varios meses la situación, en 2007 por fin logró encontrar una forma de sacar provecho al impacto de su creación. Luis ideó un sistema basado en CAPTCHA que, además de brindar seguridad a los sitios web, al mismo tiempo permitía digitalizar libros. Esto lo lograba pidiéndole al usuario escribir 2 palabras en lugar de una. La primera palabra sería una palabra conocida por el sistema que servía para autenticar que el usuario era un humano, y la segunda era una captura de una palabra que pertenecía a algún libro viejo que el sistema estaba intentando digitalizar, pero que no había podido reconocer. De esta forma, podía utilizar el tiempo de millones de personas para crear una gran biblioteca virtual. A esta nueva idea la nombró reCAPTCHA y pronto comenzó a ser utilizada por más de 100.000 sitios en Internet. El éxito y la innovación de la idea atrajo la atención de Google, que decidió adquirir ambas tecnologías en 2009 por un valor aproximado de 20 millones de dólares. Actualmente, Google utiliza dicha tecnología para crear la mayor biblioteca digital de libros antiguos del mundo. La venta de las compañías a Google representó una jugosa cifra para Luis, quien a los 31 años se convirtió en millonario. Pero esto no hizo que su creatividad e ingenio se detuvieran. Quería hacer algo para ayudar. Ya había vendido 2 compañías a Google, no necesitaba más dinero, y me di cuenta que en Guatemala y en toda Latinoamérica muchas personas quieren aprender inglés, pero usualmente aquellos que más lo necesitan no tienen recursos, dijo Luis en una entrevista. Con esta idea en mente, comenzó a trabajar en un proyecto que permitiera a las personas aprender cualquier idioma completamente gratis, ya que, por ejemplo, para aquel entonces las alternativas digitales para aprender inglés eran bastante costosas. Algunas de ellas, como Open English, muy popular en Latinoamérica, tenía un costo de hasta $1000. Sin embargo, para poder brindar una educación de calidad, necesitaba encontrar rentabilidad de otra manera. Allí Luis se puso a reflexionar cómo en la Edad Media, si alguien quería aprender algún oficio, como la panadería por ejemplo, buscaban a alguien que ya supiera dicho oficio para que se convirtiera en su maestro. De esta manera, el maestro enseñaba al alumno todo lo relacionado con la labor y en retribución, el aprendiz trabajaba para el maestro. Este modelo beneficiaba a ambas partes y permitía un acceso gratuito a la educación, pero fue sustituido en la revolución industrial por el modelo de educación que existe hasta nuestros días, ya que se necesitaba enseñar lo mismo a cientos de personas, y era más rentable y escalable contratar a un profesor para varios alumnos. Con este punto de vista y las cifras de usuarios antes alcanzadas en sus otros proyectos, Luis ideó un modelo de negocio para su próxima empresa. Así, en el 2011 nace Duolingo, una plataforma web y aplicación móvil que permite a sus usuarios aprender idiomas gratuitamente, al mismo tiempo que van traduciendo Internet. En ese año, la plataforma recibió una inversión inicial de $3 millones por parte de un grupo de inversionistas. Dicho capital ascendió a $18 millones en el 2012. La aplicación Duolingo es bastante sencilla e intuitiva. Está perfectamente diseñada para sentirse como un videojuego. Los usuarios pueden dedicar solo unos minutos al día y así mejorar significativamente su dominio de un nuevo lenguaje. Y lo más interesante, a medida que los usuarios van aprendiendo un nuevo idioma, se les va pidiendo que traduzcan a su lengua nativa frases sacadas de internet, cuya dificultad va acorde con el nivel del estudiante. Cuando una misma frase ha sido traducida de la misma forma por más de 10 estudiantes distintos, la frase es aprobada y pasa a ser parte de la traducción oficial del documento. Este sistema ha comprobado obtener resultados de la misma calidad que traducciones realizadas por profesionales. Gran parte de las traducciones conseguidas por los estudiantes son vendidas a terceros. Uno de los principales clientes de Duolingo es CNN, quien le paga a la plataforma por traducir sus artículos a diferentes idiomas. De esta forma, y con la implementación de un modelo de publicidad y donaciones, Duolingo logró recaudar la cifra de $36 millones en el 2018, cifra suficiente para mantener la plataforma y permitir aumentar periódicamente la cantidad de cursos disponibles. Hoy Duolingo cuenta con más de 300 millones de usuarios, tiene disponibles 94 cursos para aprender 23 lenguajes diferentes y cuenta con la posibilidad de certificar a sus usuarios digitalmente en el idioma que hayan aprendido. En el 2013, la revista PC Magazine nombró a Duolingo como la mejor forma de aprender idiomas usando software. El éxito de la plataforma es tal que hasta el mismo Bill Gates ha reconocido públicamente que la utilizaba para intentar aprender otros idiomas aparte de su inglés nativo. Actualmente, Luis tiene 41 años y se dedica a sus labores como CEO en Duolingo. Por su trabajo, ha recibido varios reconocimientos como el Premio MacArthur, también conocido como el Premio del Genio, y hace parte de los 50 mejores cerebros de la ciencia según la revista Discover. Tiene en mente varias características que espera lanzar a futuro en la plataforma y espera pronto revolucionar la industria de la educación implementando la misma filosofía que le ha permitido crear todas sus empresas, la posibilidad que brinda Internet para aprovechar el esfuerzo de millones de personas. Así concluimos la inspiradora historia de Luis Bonan, un genio nacido en Latinoamérica que con su particular forma de ver al mundo y sus ideas revolucionarias está cambiando la forma en que las personas aprenden a través de Internet y a la vez contribuyen con el logro de grandes propósitos. En las propias palabras de Luis, la razón que motiva mi investigación es que si pudimos llevar a un hombre a la luna con 100.000 personas, ¿qué podríamos hacer con 100 millones de personas y la ayuda de Internet? Si el video te gustó, por favor dale like y suscríbete para seguir disfrutando de nuestros videos.
Otro aspecto importante de la innovación disruptiva es que se basa en Jobs to be done, una metodología que fue diseñada para facilitar el entendimiento del comportamiento de los consumidores o clientes. Dicha teoría no se basa en la demografía del mercado ni en las características del producto, se basa más bien en la evaluación de una toma de decisiones enfocada en el progreso, trabajo que necesita hacerse que desea el usuario final. Esta metodología sin duda abre una gama de posibilidades de creatividad e innovación, una diferente forma de ver las cosas y a los usuarios y, por supuesto, una atención a las verdaderas prioridades del consumidor. Algo de suma importancia es entender que la innovación es una forma de dar solución a problemas de una forma creativa, por lo que no surge únicamente de grandes corporativos o empresas completamente constituidas. La innovación surge también de personas como tú y como yo que quieren ayudar a resolver las problemáticas de sus comunidades, como es el caso del COVID-19. La innovación inevitablemente va relacionada con la tecnología. Es así como llegamos al término tecnología disruptiva, también utilizado por Christensen, y que no es más que la innovación disruptiva aplicada a la tecnología, permitiendo que los usuarios hagan su vida más fácil a través de productos o servicios enfocados en los avances tecnológicos. La aplicación de los diferentes tipos de innovación puede tener un alcance amplio que abarca diferentes áreas y deriva en modelos aplicados de distinta forma. Te presentamos un ejemplo que surge de la mercadotecnia y resulta en publicidad disruptiva. En 2015, el fabricante de automóviles sueco Volvo realizó una estrategia sorprendente durante la publicidad del Super Bowl, dando un nombre muy ad hoc al evento, la mayor intercepción de la historia. ¿En qué consistió la estrategia? Pidió a los clientes que tuitearan con el hashtag Volvo Contest cada vez que veían un comercial de otra compañía automotriz. Pidió que nominaran a uno de sus seres queridos para ganar un automóvil Volvo. Esta compañía se considera marketing disruptive porque Volvo hizo publicidad de una forma completamente diferente. La realidad es que la disrupción sucede en todos lados. Sin embargo, es importante mencionar que la innovación disruptiva no hace sentido en el corto plazo porque parece que probar cosas diferentes o incursionar en un negocio que nadie había pensado antes es alocado y es riesgoso. Por eso, no muchos lo intentan, pero los que lo hacen logran darse cuenta de que esa implementación de una idea loca puede ser el futuro exitoso que su empresa necesita. Solo es cuestión de querer dar ese salto creativo que puede cambiar vidas y empresas.
On February 1st, during the big game, you're going to see a lot of car commercials, but you won't see Volvo. Instead, we want you to be part of the greatest interception ever. How? By using their commercials to give you a chance to win one of our cars for the person that matters most to you.
First, tweet their name when you see any car commercial during the game with hashtag Volvo Contest. So, while other car companies are showing you what matters to them, we want to know who matters most to you.
My daughter. My mother-in-law.
My good friend who just had a baby so she could drive her son around safely.
Who would you give a Volvo to?
On February 1st, during the big game, you're going to see a lot of car commercials. But you won't see Volvo. Instead, we want you to be a part of the greatest interception ever. How? By using their commercials to give you the chance to win one of our cars for the person that matters most to you.
I would definitely give that Volvo to my dad. My sister.
My husband. My best friend. My babysitter. That woman works so hard.
First, tweet their name when you see any car commercial during the game with hashtag Volvo Contest. Then tell us why, and you can win them a brand new Volvo XC60. So, while other car companies are showing you what matters to them, we want to know who inspires you.
My dad.
Who moves you.
My daughter.
Who matters most to you.
My grandma.
My mother.
My parent. My brother. My mom.
Who would you give a Volvo to?
On Super Bowl Sunday, the US is big, loud, and expensive. Sweden is Swedish. So how does Volvo compete with the other car brands and their millions spent on commercials during the game? We don't. We steal it.
When you see a car commercial during the game, any car commercial, not Volvo, you can tweet using the hashtag Volvo Contest.
The interception was simple. Their commercials would give you a chance to win one of our cars or someone you love. Just tweet their name to Volvo during any car commercial. When Mercedes wanted you to look here, people immediately went here. When Lexus spent 4.5 million for this, Twitter looked like this. Shifting the social conversation to Volvo. With up to 2,000 tweets per minute every time their commercials aired, we changed the Super Bowl conversation from one loud 30-second roar to an ongoing conversation about Volvo that lasted the entire game. We were the only car company to trend both nationally and globally.
So they weren't advertising on TV, they were letting all the other car companies do that for them?
And just like that, their millions of dollars worth of car commercials turned into a social conversation about Volvo, helping our XC60 to a 70% sales increase the month following the game, the highest in its segment.
I love you. I love you. I love you all. I love marketing. I really do. I'm a son of a marketeer, grew in marketing. I love marketing. I love marketeers. That's an amazing job. But let me tell you a story. I love marketing so much that a few years ago I was very proud of being a marketeer. Very proud of myself. Probably I watched too much of Mad Men. But in that context, I felt that it was an advantage of being a marketeer. So we are in this nightclub with a friend of mine, and two girls are coming up, and they talk with us, and after a few moments they say, "What are you doing for a living?" So there I am, very proud. I say, "I'm a marketeer." They left. So my friend sitting next to me said, "Hey, we're joking. We're firemen." And they came back. So at that moment, I'm wondering, what did we do? Watching Mad Men in the 60s, where marketeers, advertisers were great people. People were in love with marketeers. Why nowadays being a fireman is a lot more cool than being a marketeer? What did we do to the job? So nowadays, being a marketeer makes girls escape. So I started to look around and ask myself, what can we do for that? There is a need for change. So let me explain. This number is the number of hours I spent in front of a dead screen being a marketeer. 22,850 hours in front of a screen doing PowerPoint like a rat. No wonder they're escaping. You don't want to be with somebody who's just doing PowerPoint all day, trying to make business plans. It's not fun. You have no idea. Some of you probably have experienced that. The others, please don't. Meetings. I fell asleep in so many meetings, and I drank coffee listening to my friends' business plans, trying to make consumers dream, but making me sleep already in the room. And I had other coffees and coffees in bad cups. You have no idea how much caffeine I had to intake just to survive as a marketeer. That's not cool. So finally, being a marketeer also makes you do ingredient lists where even the toughest lawyers are being scared. So there is one moment where if you look around nowadays in Europe, 1 out of 2 sick leave is burnout. People being burned out as marketeers. I've seen marketeers crying in front of their PCs. You don't want to do that. How can you make people dream if you're crying in your own job? That doesn't work. Let me explain to you how marketing has evolved and why we reached that stage. In the 30s, just here, we were in what we call the production area. The production area is an amazing time where we had to produce more and more. So we did more cars, we did more buildings, and the magic figure of plus 10, plus 12% was being there as a result. And we produced and produced. Marketing was very easy, just controlling the production. Then we entered in the consumption area. Because what happens when you stop producing, people consume. That's a simple fact. And they consumed and consumed and consumed. At that moment, the marketeers, the Mad Men area, made a lot of money. That was great to be a marketeer. You were rich, handsome, and everybody was consuming your product. You were the chief dreamer. The problem is, with the competition arising, the crisis arising, all of a sudden, people started to consume less. So the marketeers had great ideas. They started to communicate. They did great advertising. But the problem is, again, with competition, less time to speak, they started to tell funny stories, bad stories. They started to lie. So the marketeers arrived in hell. They sold their soul. And when they arrived in hell, they can see the flames. So what they do, they sat on the pile of cash they had before this era, and all of a sudden it was nice. It was just warm, and it was a nice feeling. But the marketeers, a few years later, started to arrive in hell with very little cash under the bottom. And I can tell you that they start to feel the flames a lot more. They get fired, they get burnt out, they have so many troubles, consumers leaving, the companies are going down, and so forth. So that's where I'm coming in, to tell them now we are in what we call the area of relationship, of relation. In that area, people know you. If you work in a company, you have so many friends who know you that you're not a marketeer on your ivory tower. You are at 6% from anybody on earth. That's a mathematical fact, and it's even reducing now. So I can tell you, I made the test between me and Bill Gates, one person. Between me and Pink Floyd, left of it, one person. In that context, and I'm not a jet setter at all, really not. But can you imagine that? We are so close from anybody on earth. So you don't want to be doing a product that people will talk nasty about. In this context, we used to take the cash out of consumers, and they loved us for that. They did. But nowadays, if we don't give our heart and our soul to what we're doing, they will not give that cash anymore. They don't want to. What they do is they will pay us for what we give, what we really have. And that's a change in attitude. I'm here today to tell you that you can do the best strategy ever as a marketeer, marketing models. My kid can learn that. That's very easy. It's 3 simple things. But having the right behavior so your strategy means something for the consumer is something different. This is why my advice tonight is about selling your soul. Actually, no, offering your soul. Because if you're selling it, that means you're doing wrong advertising. So offer your soul. This is a concept which is quite funny. The soul is the reunion of energy, time, conscience, authenticity, and love. You know what? I spend my time going around the world and speaking to very scary CEOs, and they tell me I have an issue with my company. We're not doing the double-digit growth we used to. So how can you help? And I talk about love and energy. You know what happens? They look at me like, damn. They call their secretary and they say, who's that guy? I don't need some therapist or whatever. I just need, a guy that means business. So they thank me. I leave the room. And for 1 year, they never talk to me again. They actually work with big consultants, guys that really mean business, talking double-digit growth, talking profit and so forth. Those guys, that's what they want to hear. But 1 year later, when they actually don't get that profit, when they don't reach their target, they call us again. And I start explaining a bit more about what is the soul of the brand, what is the soul of the company, and how they can bring love and energy. So this is why tonight I'm going to speak a bit about this love and energy I can bring in companies. First, love. I love this. You've all heard about this story about lasagna made of horse meat? Yeah. So there is one guy, marketing officer, probably chief marketing officer, big car, nice suit. He's going to Romania, and he sees horses coming in the factory and lasagna coming out. 3 options. First, he doesn't know what a horse looks like. He's like, wow, beefs in Romania are big. I don't know. You think so? No. Second, the guy sees horses coming in, and he knows that a horse costs $1, a sick horse, and a beef $10. So he's made $9 profit. So he's very happy, hoping that he will have sufficient cash in hell. Remember the burning bottom? Or thirdly, he never went to Romania. He doesn't even know what is his product. But how much love does he have for his consumers, for his employees, and even for the employees of other companies? Because lasagna companies went bankrupt, even those with beefs inside. So those guys, they have a responsibility. How can you love people, humans, if you're doing something like this? This is about loving your consumers also. You know the housewife less than 50? You know, this concept, it was invented in the 80s by crazy marketeers who realized that it was the biggest chunk of the population. But hey, 30 years or 40 years later, the housewife less than 50 is now a lot more than this. She's about 50. So now we don't talk about housewife less than 50, we call them the 1855. That's how marketeers talk about their consumers, the 1855. That's amazing. You know, you would talk like this about your mom, about your sister, about your wife. Oh, you're an 1855? That means also as a marketeer that after 55 you're dead. Bearing in mind that 70% of the cash belongs to the 50 plus. So the marketeers nowadays, they're just scratching for the 30 or 40% that remained. This is not about loving your consumers. You need to love them, really understand them with empathy. We call it shit in, shit out. It's very simple. I've seen so many marketing directors yell at their teams, yell at their agencies, saying, you'd better be creative by tomorrow. That helps. Yes, the quality of the word that comes out is usually quite amazing. You know, I had friends of mine coming crying, he's asked for this for tomorrow. Yes, she made an amazing job. You know, consumers were fighting for her product afterwards. Because in this context, a few years ago, you know, when I talk about the marketeers in hell, but the agencies were sitting next to them also with a pile of cash. But nowadays, agencies don't get the bonuses. They don't get that. They work by respect, they work by love, they get. Same for the teams. Nobody gets fancy cars anymore. Nobody gets fancy bonuses anymore. Hardly any. So in this context, you will work with love. What you do is what you get from your consumers. And finally, love yourself. How many people really love themselves? And I'm not talking about ego or being fond of yourself. Loving yourself is taking care of yourself. You guys here, the next generation coming in the companies, do not accept. I've seen so many marketeers burnt out, completely burnt out. How much will you be prepared to accept in terms of pressure, in terms of being told off, in terms of evaluation, telling you that your long-term strategy is lacking focus? What are you meaning here? It's just telling you that you don't get your bonus because the envelope is too small. But how many pressure will you take on? Love yourself. Do not accept what's going to happen next. This is about energy. Actually, this picture is from my partner, and she will actually be very mad if she knows that I'm using that picture. But she's given everything she had, and there is one moment where you need to stop. What can you do to actually get energy? You know what companies do to get you motivated? They give you objectives. Plus 4%. You have a nice CEO coming in like this. You're all the employee of X company, and say, next year we're going to do plus 4%. Wow, very motivating. Can you imagine Napoleon or Mel Gibson on his horse in Braveheart saying, we'll increase our territory by plus 4%? You would die for that? You turn around and you escape gently. You don't die for plus 4%. This is not an objective, this is a result. What you need to do is make people dream, give them human objectives. Also, how do you get energy? Most of the people say, yeah, go to the gym once per month, a bit of running and a beer behind. That doesn't resource your brain. Get some energy. Don't watch reality TV. In innocence, they have fresh time, alarms. Every 2 hours, you have to get out and resource your brain. Do something. Authenticity. I love babies. You know what babies have? They have the capacity in their brain, because they can't speak and don't understand the language, to understand non-verbal signals, pheromones. They know when you're not authentic. So you know when you visit a friend and the baby is ugly, you go to the hospital and you're like, oh, what do? You smile and you're like, Yazoo! And the baby cries because he knows you're not authentic. But as adults, we also know, we can feel it in our belly when a brand is not authentic, when somebody is giving you lies about products. We can feel it. So be authentic. Don't sell crap. You can't do that. Shit in, shit out. Finally, time. Take and give time. Time is an amazing thing. It's a sign of respect. You know the word ASAP? In English, it means any strategy, any priorities. It works in French as well. So in this context, when somebody says ASAP, he's just pushing his mess towards you. And the worst you can get is the word small or quick. If you hear that word, escape, run away. This is somebody trying to expel his guilt, asking you for something he doesn't want to ask. Say, can you do me a small or quick analysis? Can you do a quick business plan? Oh, I quickly need this. That means your work is not important. Do it quick. As an agency or as a team or as a partner, don't accept the word small or quick. Escape from that. Finally, once you hear all this, you have a choice as marketeers, but at any employee or at any project you're working on, to fly like eagles or to scratch with the chickens, to pay attention to details, to still remain with the old methodology we had. There is a time for changing. And in this context, I don't have any slides anymore to talk to you about one thing. Brands, projects, whatever you do, is made by humans for humans. So my advice to you in this context, start acting as humans. Humans mean love and energy. All you need is love. That is true. So get some energy and give some. Get some love for yourself, love yourself and share it, and then you will grow. So remember, be humans, and please keep on loving. Thank you.
How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered manned flight, and the Wright brothers beat them to it? There's something else at play here. About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery. And this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operate in it. As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was codify it. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat-screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat-screen TVs. They've been making flat-screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. And Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products, and nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The goal is not to do business with everybody who needs what you have. The goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe. Here's the best part. None of what I'm telling you is my opinion. It's all grounded in the tenets of biology, not psychology, biology. If you look at a cross-section of the human brain looking from the top down, what you see is the human brain is actually broken into three major components that correlate perfectly with the golden circle. Our newest brain, our Homo sapien brain, our neocortex, corresponds with the what level. The neocortex is responsible for all of our rational and analytical thought and language. The middle two sections make up our limbic brains, and our limbic brains are responsible for all of our feelings, like trust and loyalty. It's also responsible for all human behavior, all decision-making, and it has no capacity for language. In other words, when we communicate from the outside in, yes, people can understand vast amounts of complicated information like features and benefits and facts and figures. It just doesn't drive behavior. When we communicate from the inside out, we're talking directly to the part of the brain that controls behavior, and then we allow people to rationalize it with the tangible things we say and do. This is where gut decisions come from. Sometimes you can give somebody all the facts and your figures, and they say, I know what all the facts and details say, but it just doesn't feel right. Why would we use that verb? It doesn't feel right, because the part of the brain that controls decision-making doesn't control language. And the best we can muster up is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Or sometimes you say you're leading with your heart, or you're leading with your soul. Well, I hate to break it to you, those aren't other body parts controlling your behavior. It's all happening here in your limbic brain, the part of the brain that controls decision-making and not language. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to vote for you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal and want to be a part of what it is that you do? Again, the goal is not just to sell people who need what you have. The goal is to sell to people who believe what you believe. The goal is not just to hire people who need a job. It's to hire people who believe what you believe. I always say that, there's if you hire people just because they can do a job, they'll work for your money. But if you hire people who believe what you believe, they work for you with blood and sweat and tears. And nowhere else is there a better example of this than with the Wright brothers. Most people don't know about Samuel Pierpont Langley. And back in the early 20th century, the pursuit of powered man flight was like the .com of the day. Everybody was trying it. And Samuel Pierpont Langley had what we assume to be the recipe for success. I mean, even now, you ask people, why did your product or why did your company fail? And people always give you the same permutation of the same three things. Undercapitalized, the wrong people, bad market conditions. It's always the same three things. So let's explore that. Samuel Pierpont Langley was given $50,000 by the War Department to figure out this flying machine. Money was no problem. He held a seat at Harvard and worked at the Smithsonian and was extremely well connected. He knew all the big minds of the day. He hired the best minds money could find, and the market conditions were fantastic. The New York Times followed him around everywhere, and everyone was rooting for Langley. Then how come we've never heard of Samuel Pierpont Langley? A few hundred miles away in Dayton, Ohio, Orville and Wilbur Wright. They had none of what we consider to be the recipe for success. They had no money. They paid for their dream with the proceeds from their bicycle shop. Not a single person on the Wright brothers team had a college education, not even Orville or Wilbur. And the New York Times followed them around nowhere. The difference was Orville and Wilbur were driven by a cause, by a purpose, by a belief. They believed that if they could figure out this flying machine, it'll change the course of the world. Samuel Pierpont Langley was different. He wanted to be rich and he wanted to be famous. He was in pursuit of the result. He was in pursuit of the riches. And lo and behold, look what happened. The people who believed in the Wright brothers' dream worked with them with blood and sweat and tears. The others just worked for the paycheck. And they tell stories of how every time the Wright brothers went out, they would have to take 5 sets of parts because that's how many times they would crash before they came in for supper. And eventually, on December 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers took flight. And no one was there to even experience it. We found out about it a few days later. And further proof that Langley was motivated by the wrong thing, the day the Wright brothers took flight, he quit. He could have said, that's an amazing discovery, guys, and I will improve upon your technology. But he didn't. He wasn't first. He didn't get rich. He didn't get famous. So he quit. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And if you talk about what you believe, you will attract those who believe what you believe. Well, why is it important to attract those who believe what you believe? Something called the law of diffusion of innovation. And if you don't know the law, you definitely know the terminology. The first 2.5% of our population are our innovators. The next 13.5% of our population are our early adopters. The next 34% are your early majority, your late majority, and your laggards. The only reason these people buy touch-tone phones is because you can't buy rotary phones anymore. We all sit at various places at various times on the scale, but what the law of diffusion of innovation tells us is that if you want mass market success or mass market acceptance of an idea, you cannot have it until you achieve this tipping point between 15 and 18% market penetration, and then the system tips. And I love asking businesses, what's your conversion on new business? And they love to tell you, oh, it's about 10% proudly. Well, you can trip over 10% of the customers. We all have about 10% who just get it. That's how we describe them, right? That's like that gut feeling, oh, they just get it. The problem is, how do you find the ones that just get it before you're doing business with them versus the ones who don't get it? So it's this here, this little gap, that you have to close, as Geoffrey Moore calls it, crossing the chasm. Because you see, the early majority will not try something until someone else has tried it first. And these guys, the innovators and the early adopters, they're comfortable making those gut decisions. They're more comfortable making those intuitive decisions that are driven by what they believe about the world and not just what product is available. These are the people who stood online for 6 hours to buy an iPhone when they first came out, when you could have just walked into the store the next week and bought one off the shelf. These are the people who spent $40,000 on flat screen TVs when they first came out, even though the technology was substandard. And by the way, they didn't do it because the technology was so great. They did it for themselves. It's because they wanted to be first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe. In fact, people will do the things that prove what they believe. The reason that person bought the iPhone in the first 6 hours, or stood in line for 6 hours, was because of what they believed about the world and how they wanted everybody to see them. They were first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So let me give you a famous example, a famous failure and a famous success of the law of diffusion of innovation. First, the famous failure. It's a commercial example. As we said before a second ago, the recipe for success is money and the right people and the right marketing conditions, right? You should have success then. Look at TiVo. From the time TiVo came out about 8 or 9 years ago to this current day, they are the single highest quality product on the market. Hands down, there is no dispute. They were extremely well funded. Market conditions were fantastic. I mean, we use TiVo as a verb. I TiVo stuff on my piece of junk Time Warner DVR all the time. But TiVo is a commercial failure. They've never made money. And when they went IPO, their stock was at about $30 or $40 and then plummeted, and it's never traded above 10. In fact, I don't think it's even traded above 6, except for a couple of little spikes. Because you see, when TiVo launched their product, they told us all what they had. They said, we have a product that pauses live TV, skips commercials, rewinds live TV, and memorizes your viewing habits without you even asking. And the cynical majority said, we don't believe you, we don't need it, we don't like it, you're scaring us. What if they had said, if you're the kind of person who likes to have total control over every aspect of your life, boy, do we have a product for you. It pauses live TV, skips commercials, memorizes your viewing habits, etc., etc. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, and what you do simply serves as the proof of what you believe. Now let me give you a successful example of the law of diffusion of innovation. In the summer of 1963, 250,000 people showed up on the Mall in Washington to hear Dr. King speak. They sent out no invitations, and there was no website to check the date. How do you do that? Well, Dr. King wasn't the only man in America who was a great orator. He wasn't the only man in America who suffered in a pre-civil rights America. In fact, some of his ideas were bad. But he had a gift. He didn't go around telling people what needed to change in America. He went around and told people what he believed. I believe, I believe, I believe, he told people. And people who believed what he believed took his cause and they made it their own, and they told people. And some of those people created structures to get the word out to even more people. And lo and behold, 250,000 people showed up on the right day, on the right time to hear him speak. How many of them showed up for him? 0. They showed up for themselves. It's what they believed about America that got them to travel on a bus for 8 hours to stand in the sun in Washington in the middle of August. It's what they believed, and it wasn't about black versus white. 25% of the audience was white. Dr. King believed that there are 2 types of laws in this world, those that are made by a higher authority and those that are made by man. And not until all the laws that are made by man are consistent with the laws that are made by the higher authority will we live in a just world. It just so happens that the civil rights movement was the perfect thing to help him bring his cause to life. We followed him not for him, but for ourselves. And by the way, he gave the I have a dream speech, not the I have a plan speech. Listen to politicians now with their comprehensive 12-point plans. They're not inspiring anybody. Because there are leaders and there are those who lead. Leaders hold a position of power or authority, but those who lead inspire us. Whether they're individuals or organizations, we follow those who lead, not because we have to, but because we want to. We follow those who lead, not for them, but for ourselves. And it's those who start with why that have the ability to inspire those around them or find others who inspire them. Thank you very much.
Share
on the Human Network. Cisco, welcome to the Human Network.
Círculo Dorado. El círculo dorado es un concepto amplio y muy útil. Será tu labor ayudar a los solvers a comprender cómo es que pueden aplicarlo en dos principales vertientes, la de la innovación y la personal. En lo que se refiere a la personal, el círculo dorado es también una herramienta de liderazgo que promueve llevar un propósito a la acción y por medio de esto inspirar a otros a perseguir un propósito en común. Liderazgo descubierto. La verdad desnuda de lo que realmente hacen los grandes líderes. Ellos crean un entorno de alto rendimiento en donde el éxito es inevitable. 1. Propósito del liderazgo. Despiertan la posibilidad en las personas de entregar resultados extraordinarios. Principios del liderazgo. Operan con audacia, simplicidad y rapidez. Verdades del liderazgo. Operan con verdades del liderazgo. La 1 se entienden, tienen una historia que contar, tienen una marca de liderazgo auténtica, se basan en fortalezas, son felices siendo vulnerables, son ellos mismos, comparten su filosofía de liderazgo, crean confianza, son positivos, saludables y felices. 2. Propósito, inspiran a la acción. El propósito está en el corazón de todo lo que hacen, marcan la diferencia, tienen coraje, se esfuerzan, son audaces, cuentan historias y dan ejemplos que dan significado e inspiran acción, crean una sensación de valor real. 3. Crean equipos de alto rendimiento, se sienten cómodos con la colaboración, el empoderamiento, la autonomía y saben cómo construir equipos rápidamente. 4. Detonan la innovación, crean una cultura donde todos surgen con grandes ideas para mejorar el rendimiento y agregar valor, innovar en todos los aspectos del negocio. Son descubridores implacables, explotan la tecnología y las plataformas. 5. Manejan la ambigüedad, eliminan el riesgo. Se sienten cómodos con las paradojas, simplifican el complejo, entienden la necesidad de desarrollar planes, son ágiles, son fundamentalmente resistentes para enfrentar un mundo en crisis perpetua. Anticipan y matan el riesgo rápidamente. Se mantienen en contacto con el mundo. Educan, ayudan a las personas y a las organizaciones a aprender, inspiran curiosidad, solo dicen cuando las instrucciones son absolutamente necesarias, se aseguran de que se aplique el aprendizaje, lideran con preguntas, capacitan, desarrollan y fomentan la capacidad. 7. Entregan con calma, traducen la estrategia en significado e inspiran acción, se unen a los puntos, se sienten cómodos, aceleran disminuyendo la velocidad, entregan a través de personas y equipos, ejecutan. El Círculo Dorado ofrece una metodología para comunicar un propósito y está basada en la premisa de que se puede encontrar mayor inspiración en un propósito, puesto que el cuestionamiento por qué se encuentra más orientado hacia los sentimientos de confianza y lealtad y a su vez hacia el propósito que se persigue. El Círculo Dorado pone al centro el por qué, considerando que la respuesta a esta pregunta proporciona un sentido de propósito con el que todos aquellos que pertenecen a una empresa u organización se sienten identificados. Antes de seguir explicando la metodología del Círculo Dorado aplicado a las organizaciones, es relevante comprender su aplicación a nivel personal, pues este sentido de propósito surge a nivel personal. Todas las empresas que han logrado tener un impacto significativo tienen algo en común, un líder o representante que inspira y con ello logra transmitir la relevancia y autenticidad del por qué se hace lo que se hace. Pensemos por ejemplo, en Bill Gates. Bill Gates hace lo que hace hasta el día de hoy porque está convencido de que la tecnología debe cambiar el mundo y con este porqué ha formado importantes empresas de tecnología como lo es Microsoft, además de muchos productos y servicios, creando oportunidades para millones de personas. Es claramente importante responder de manera individual a la pregunta ¿por qué estoy haciendo lo que hago? Pero es igual de importante saber comunicarlo. Bill Gates se ha asegurado de formarse una identidad que sea coherente con su porqué y sobre todo de saber comunicar al mundo sus ideales para lograr que su sentido de propósito sea adoptado por muchos, entre ellos sus empleados, sus clientes e incluso otras empresas. Continuando con las etapas que definen la metodología del Círculo Dorado, el cómo revelará las fortalezas y valores que diferencian a la organización o empresa de las demás. En el caso personal, el cómo resulta de explotar tus fortalezas como individuo, por ejemplo, Retomemos el caso de Bill Gates. Él se distingue por ser una persona reservada y estar fuertemente interesado en el bienestar social. En congruencia con esto crea una de las fundaciones más importantes actualmente, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Mediante esta fundación es como Gates resalta sus fortalezas y los valores que lo definen y que en consecuencia define lo que hace. La fundación es tan solo una de las muchas maneras en las que Bill Gates responde al cómo lo hace. Aunque pareciera un concepto sencillo, el cómo esconde en sí algo muy importante, la autenticidad de ser quien dices que eres y de ser congruente con tu porqué. La incongruencia entre quien dice que es, lo que hace, cómo lo hace y la realidad sería una total discrepancia, carente de autenticidad, lo que provocaría que muchas personas e incluso aliados comerciales decidieran evitar tener vínculos con sus empresas e incluso con él mismo. Finalmente, el qué suele ser un concepto más sencillo, puesto que representa los productos o servicios que la compañía u organización ofrece a sus clientes actuales o potenciales. En el ámbito personal, el qué podría esconderse por medio de los éxitos o fracasos. Podríamos preguntarnos qué es lo que ha resultado de lo que hago y de cómo lo hago. Reflexiona un poco en la respuesta que darías al qué. En tu caso personal, por supuesto, no podrás hacerlo sin reflexionar antes en tu por qué y tu cómo. ¿Qué? Cada organización en el planeta sabe qué hacen. Esos son los productos que venden o los servicios que ofrecen. ¿Cómo? Algunas organizaciones saben cómo lo hacen. Esas son las cosas que los hacen especiales o que los separan de su competencia. ¿Por qué? Muy pocas organizaciones conocen el por qué. Ellos hacen lo que hacen. El por qué no se trata de ganar dinero. Eso es un resultado. ¿Por qué? Es un propósito, causa, creencia. Es la razón de que exista su organización. Una vez que se ha logrado dar respuesta detallada a cada una de las etapas del círculo dorado, entonces se tiene lo necesario para comenzar a diseñar un modelo de negocios, algo con lo que los solvers ya se encuentran familiarizados. Al buscar crear o renovar un modelo de negocios, será necesario partir de un marco general, pues de lo contrario, el integrar lo aprendido sobre innovación se volvería una tarea mucho más compleja. Cada vez que se innova dentro de alguna de las etapas del marco general y un modelo de negocios, configuración, oferta, experiencia, el resto se verá afectado, creando un efecto dominó que incluso retará a las otras etapas a innovar para poder adaptarse al cambio generado. De este efecto dominó de innovación han resultado muchos ejemplos de modelos de negocios en diferentes mercados y sectores. Para dar continuidad y reforzar los conceptos relacionados con el círculo dorado, será relevante que invites a los solvers a revisar ejemplos adicionales. Uno de ellos puede ser el de Philips, que es una empresa reconocida y un ejemplo claro de la aplicación del por qué, cómo y qué. En este link puedes revisar los detalles y adaptarlos como consideres conveniente.